this is a public system predominantly favoring non-for-profit spaces.
But you didn't answer the question. Are you rejecting that request, or are you still considering it?
Wow. That was Canadian Press?
I don't care who it was. Get her.
Liberal Minister Jenna Sudds met with reporters this week to tell everyone how amazing the $10 a day daycare program is. She must have thought that everyone listening was just going to accept the gaslighting like the good little government paid reporters that they are. Well, she was wrong.
Let's take a look.
Hi, Minister Sudds. Mia Rabson from the Canadian Press. I'm just wondering if you could update us on the status of your sort of own deliberation on Ontario's request to lift the for-profit limits. I know that was something you were supposed to talk with Todd Smith about, and then he resigned. Has that caused any delay in that, and what's the status of your consideration on that?
Well, as I shared previously, prior to him resigning, the only conversation that I was interested in having with the province was with respect to moving forward with a sustainable funding model for our childcare operators here in Ontario. Since that time, we have seen the province announce that funding formula, which will come into place on January 1st. Obviously, there's been a change in minister at the provincial level here in Ontario, and I look forward to engaging in dialogue with Minister Dunlop, obviously as she gets into the role and gets fully briefed.
Okay, so you may be wondering, what are they talking about? What is this for-profit cap thing? What is that? And why is this important?
My guess is that it is like a maximum amount that they're permitted to charge.
You would think, but no, that's actually incorrect. The for-profit cap is actually the percentage of total providers, daycare providers, that are for-profit versus non-profit. So there's a cap. So let's say you have 100 daycare providers across Ontario, and 70 of them are non-profit. That means you're only allowed to have 30 out of that 100 that can register for the $10 a day daycare program.
So when they say not for profit, is that like churches and stuff, or what is that?
Yeah.
Because I often see like daycare programs being run out of churches or some run out of schools.
Like YMCA would be one, right? Like,
okay.
So stuff like that. So if you're, for example, just a adult at home and you have a registered daycare, that would be a for-profit daycare.
But if you're running it out of your church's basement, then that's a not-for-profit.
Well, as long as the church is the one that's getting the proceeds, yeah. Or if you work at the YMCA or things like that. So here's the issue. There's a lot more for-profit daycare organizations out there than there are not-for-profit. Now, if you're the Liberals, why do you care? Why do you care? Well, I don't know why, but let's go to a Global News article that touches on this and what the problem is.
Ontario municipalities have been forced to turn down thousands of childcare spaces in the $10 a day system because of a limit on the percentage of for-profit spaces in the province's deal with the federal government, the provincial government says. The province has so far created less than a third of the new spaces it committed to by 2026, and Ontario Education Minister Todd Smith and the association representing the province's municipalities have sent a letter to Federal Minister Jenna Sudds asking her to lift the cap on for-profit spaces. Quote, while Ontario recognizes the important role that not-for-profit providers play in the childcare system, these operators cannot fill the capacity alone, end quote, Smith and the Association of Municipalities of Ontario wrote. Quote, with wait lists so high, parents and guardians across the province are seeking quality childcare for their children in the local community, regardless of whether they be for-profit, not-for-profit, or home-based, end quote.
In the deal with the federal government, Ontario committed, grudgingly the letter says, to maintaining a ratio in the $10 a day system of 70% nonprofit spaces and 30% for-profit spaces. But that ratio has been artificially hampering growth of the national childcare system in Ontario, the province and its municipalities say. Peel Region has been identified by the province as needing the most new childcare spaces, but has had to turn down more than 2,000 potential spaces under the $10 a day program because the operators were for-profit, the letter says.
In Kawartha Lakes, children are set to spend an average of 6.4 years waiting for licensed childcare, up from an average of 3.7 years before Ontario joined the program. In the region of Waterloo, there has been a 115% increase in the number of children on the wait list, with 9,200 kids now in the queue. Ottawa's wait list has increased more than 41%.
A spokesperson for SUDS, the Minister of Families, Children and Social Development, said the minister would be responding to Smith to continue discussions on how Ontario can meet its space creation targets. Quote, "When creating this Canada-wide early learning and childcare system, our priority was and remains to increase access to high-quality, affordable, flexible and inclusive childcare for families across Canada," end quote, Genevieve Lemaire wrote in a statement. Well, the lie detector says that is a lie.
Okay, so my guess is that the not-for-profit spaces are cheaper, so the government is prioritizing subsidizing those above subsidizing for-profit spaces. Because from what I understand about this $10 a day childcare program, the government is subsidizing childcare spaces, like the whole space except for $10. So say, for example, and I'm just throwing numbers out, it's been a very long time since our son had attended childcare for his social needs. But let's just say, for example, a not-for-profit space is $40 a day. So the government gives that not-for-profit $30, and then the parents make up the rest, which is $10. Now, let's say that a for-profit charges $50 a day. Again, just throwing numbers out, just work with me here. So the government would have to subsidize them $40 a day in order for the parents to only pay $10. The government doesn't want to just subsidize everybody $30 and then the parents pay the balance, because if you're at a not-for-profit, you pay $10. If you're at a for-profit, you pay $20. So that doesn't jive with their $10 a day daycare message. My guess is that they don't want to subsidize the private for care systems like more. So that's why they're prioritizing not-for-profits.
Well, and it becomes even more complex than that, right? Because how this is working is the federal government is contributing X amount of that difference in terms of that funding, and then they're expecting the provincial government to contribute the balance. So using Tanya's example, if the not-for-profit is charging $40 a day total, and the government is saying we'll kick in $10, then it's up to the province to kick in the remaining $20.
And then the parents pay the last $10.
Right.
That's their $10 a day daycare.
So, the issue is you have the funding, it hasn't increased with inflation, it hasn't increased with anything. So the federal funding has basically remained static. And the issue is they are putting it on the provinces to make up the difference. And in the meantime, you have these daycares that are closing because they're opted into this program, and they're not getting enough money to actually pay their bills. And the other problem is that the actual funding coming from the government is delayed like a month or 2 months. So they're actually drowning in a deficit position because they're trying to pay for all their bills. They're trying to pay the rent for the building. They're trying to pay for the food for the kids and all this. And they're actually not getting the money from the government for like two months out. So there are so many problems with this. And now you have all of these problems with wait lists galore. In some cases, people are having to wait twice as long to get their kids into daycare as they did prior to this program being put in place.
Well, 6.4 years. I mean, the kid's already in primary school by that point.
Yeah, so what's the point?
It's ridiculous.
Like, Now you're not talking about daycare. Now you're talking about before and after care.
Yeah.
And I don't think that applies to $10 a day daycare.
No, I think it's for when they're preschool age.
So this is the issue. So you now have parents saying, well, I can't afford it. So, because you've raised my taxes to hell and gone to pay for this $10 a day daycare, and I can't even actually use it because I have to put my kid in a daycare that is going to charge me thousands of dollars a month anyway.
Well, and this is the problem with these new social programs that the Liberals are implementing, is that Canadians are paying for them in our taxes, and very few Canadians are able to actually access them. I mean, look at the whole dental care debacle. Number one, it's not free. We found that out in a recent video.
Free dental care.
Free dental care.
Free dental care.
Free dental care. Free dental care.
Free dental care.
Close to 100,000 seniors have gotten free dental care.
This is not free dental care.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, David. It's not a free program.
And number two, it's prioritizing seniors at this point. Now look at their pharmacare program. Not everybody can access it. It's only for contraceptives and diabetes medication, which we've been hearing from some of our audience that it's primarily type 2 diabetes medications. So again, all Canadians are paying for these programs, and even the people who need them are not able to access them.
So this is the deal, right? You have all of these potential spaces that would be available in this $10 a day daycare, but the government is not allowing the for-profits to actually participate. Therefore, and they're telling all these parents, you can have $10 a day daycare. So in the meantime, they're on these wait lists waiting for a spot to open up in the not-for-profits. Well, the problem is you don't have not-for-profits springing up like, they're growing on trees. Why? Because they're not for profit.
Well, you don't have like brand new churches popping up on every street corner, right?
Right. In
most cities, I would say.
Well, and the sad thing is churches are disappearing due to, violence from particular groups, but we won't go into that. So this is what you have. But again, this is the government punishing entrepreneurial people that are trying to start their own businesses, make some money. In some cases, it's moms that are staying at home or dads that are staying at home and saying, well, I might as well just start a business and I'll do it as a registered daycare. And the government steps in and says, nope, we're going to make it that much harder for you to actually get business because we have $10 a day daycare over here.
Yeah, it's the government's trying to create this monopoly almost with $10 a day daycare. They're not doing it right. And then parents, all they're hearing is, oh, $10 a day, $10 a day. Then they go to these for-profit daycare centers that do not have the $10 a day daycare because they don't qualify, because the government doesn't want that many of them from what it sounds like. And I mean, as a parent, why would you sign up for, again, just for an example, $50 a day for daycare when your government's telling you can get it for 10? Like, it doesn't make any sense, and it's really hurting the private sector.
Anyway, that's what the cap on for-profit daycares means. So let's go back to genocide, shall we?
I mean, you're rejecting the request from Ontario to lift the limits on for-profit spaces?
My job as we roll out this national child care program is to ensure that the highest quality, accessible, inclusive, and affordable spots are created. As we've moved forward with all of our agreements with provinces and territories, we have made the decision to ensure that this is a public system, predominantly favoring non-for-profit spaces. So I am always open to conversation with my ministerial colleagues across the country, and I look forward to having the opportunity to speak with Minister Dunlop.
But you didn't answer the question. Are you rejecting that request, or are you still considering it?
I have no.
Wow, that was Canadian Press?
I don't care who it was. Get her. Get her.
It's about time. These politicians are accountable to Canadians, and the media is supposed to be kind of like the vessel that helps us hold our government to account.
Yeah, the media are supposed to be keeping these people honest, and I love it. Well, you actually didn't answer the question. Like, my job is to make... And then she like smiles like, ah. This is not like, this is ridiculous. You have people in some of these jurisdictions waiting 6.4 years. So what are you going to do? Hey, I'm going to have a child in about 2 years, actually maybe 3, considering the economy. So can you just save my spot 6 years out from now? Because I'm going to need that when they're 3.
It's insane. You'd have to start like looking for spots 5 years before you even get pregnant.
Not had the opportunity yet to meet with Minister Dunlop.
Aaron Beswick from Chronicle Herald. Again, on the issue of for-profit and not-for-profit funding. In Nova Scotia, certainly outside of Halifax, because for-profit daycares, they're small business operators and they're women primarily who will run small businesses, and they've found that they have not been able to be approved to create new spaces and expand their businesses because of provisions in the funding formula with the federal government that say that nonprofits have to be prioritized. But in most of these towns, the nonprofits don't exist. So are you willing to make changes to the formula to allow, small to for-profit daycares to receive funding under the Canada-Nova Scotia Agreement?
See, it's not just Ontario, folks. Every single province has this same issue.
Yeah, it's this 30% cap that only 30% of the daycare spots for $10 a day daycare can be for profit.
And I love the point that this reporter brought up, because you look at Nova Scotia, heck, look at all the eastern provinces, look at Northern Ontario, look at Manitoba, like any province really, especially when you're in the rural areas. These towns and communities out there, they're not teaming with not-for-profit daycare corporations out there.
Well, they wouldn't be corporations. Again, it would be things like churches, the YMCA, perhaps, schools.
Like they don't exist. So the alternative is you have people, again, looking to fill a need in the community and make some money. So, it's, Bob or Barb with their home daycare business, and they're trying to, work it so they generate a profit, make some money, and they can help the community. Well, apparently we can't have that because those are greedy CEOs, according to the Liberals and the NDP, aren't they? Like, this is just beyond stupid.
Well, and this is how government squashes entrepreneurship.
It's also how completely out of touch, and this is the direct consequence when you implement these stupid programs with no consultation whatsoever. Because if you'd had the proper consultation, this would have actually been vetted properly, and you would have said, okay, well, maybe that's something we need to consider when we roll this out. Maybe it's not $10 a day, maybe it's $20 a day, or whatever it is.
But they did have consultation.
Not enough.
With the Century Initiative.
Oh, yeah.
Sure, I appreciate the question. Nova Scotia is faring quite well when it comes to rolling out the childcare program here in this province. They made a commitment to create 9,500 non-for-profit spaces over the 5 years of the agreement. They are at over 5,000 of those spaces already announced. And most recently, we're able to submit their 3-year action plan, which is a requirement of our funding agreement, which lays forward the plan of how they are going to create those 9,500 spaces out to the end of the agreement. And so they've been able to do so. They have demonstrated that they are committed to the agreement, committed to creating the spaces, and committed to getting to $10 a day by 2026.
So they've created just over half of the spaces from what I caught there, and she's touting this as a win?
Yeah, so according to Jenna, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all that there's massive wait lists across the country for daycares right now for families to take advantage of their $10 a day daycare, which they tout, it's a raging success and women are going back to work, except they're not. Because you have people on wait lists, and she's saying, well, in 3 years' time they'll be at the 9,500 mark, and then we'll be fine, won't we? Yeah, except the kids that are waiting for this won't need them anymore.
Well, and it makes me wonder, if you get, I think it's up to 18 months now for maternity leave, For those of you that may have daughters or daughters-in-laws or other family members or friends who are getting ready to go back to work but don't have a childcare spot for their children, just let me know in the comments, like, what are they doing? Are they not going back to work? Are they trying to find a family member who can watch the child? Because this sounds like it's a huge problem. Canadians are not able to afford anymore to have a parent stay at home. So you need two parents working. But if there's not enough daycare spots and not enough affordable daycare spots, what's going on? Like, I'm very curious to know. If you can let me know in the comments.
Well, and from BC to Nova Scotia, there's media reports that the rollout of this program, it's a disaster.
Oh, it sounds like a disaster.
Like, and it doesn't matter the province. The reason why you're hearing so many from Ontario is because Ontario is the most populated province.
Well, and that's where we live too.
But you're seeing this in every single province, that has actually opted into this. So a lot of these daycare centers are now opting out of this because they're like, if I don't, and I don't go back to a for-profit model, I'm going out of business, like so many others. So, for her to sit there and say, "Oh yeah, everything's fine. Don't worry, everything's fine."
If you're in Antigonish and there isn't a non-profit creating spaces, if you're in Sherbrooke, if you're in all these places where non-profits don't exist to create the daycare spaces, but there are small business people, and they're all the ones I've spoken to are female small business people and entrepreneurs who aren't able to provide a service that the community needs. Like, are you going to allow for that? And if not, why not? What's wrong with small business owners running daycares?
Well, I would first point out that obviously those that were already functioning, that were already providing amazing service here in the province, continue to do so and are part of the program. They were in by no means excluded. But having said that, as I just mentioned, Nova Scotia is required to move forward and to present to us a 3-year action plan, which they have done. And in doing so, needs to ensure in that plan that they demonstrate the ability to provide spaces throughout the province, including rural, including francophone, including serving children with diverse needs. That's what the action plan calls for: accessibility, inclusivity, and getting to $10 a day by 2026. And so, if the province has already demonstrated their ability to meet those targets and to move forward, and I look forward to continuing that work with them.
Remember when Michelle Ferreri, over a year ago, said, this is going to go down in flames, and the Liberals have set this up so when it does fail, they're going to be pinning it on the backs of the provinces?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember that.
The Liberals are setting it up so that when this fails, it's on the province's backs. They're going to be the fall guys for all of these shortcomings that everyone is ringing alarm bells about. It's not just Conservatives. Just Google it. Just Google childcare. Every single day there's an article about this.
Well, here you see it in real time, everybody. They're like, oh, well, like, and this is the ridiculous thing. It's, they're the ones that created this program. And then they're like, provinces, you figure it out. What? Like, this is asinine. It is absolutely ridiculous. And then when it fails, they're like, well, it wasn't us. It wasn't us. It was the provinces that didn't create the spaces. Weren't the provinces asking to increase capacity by, allowing, small business entrepreneurs, as we talked about before, to actually open a daycare? Well, that wasn't in the formula of only 30% nonprofits. And she has the gall to say, well, if those people that already have a business, they were already included. No, they weren't. Not necessarily.
Only 30% of them were included. And
right.
And it's not even...
It's spaces.
It's not 30% of the total. It's 30% of the spaces for this program were allocated to for-profit daycares.
Right. So again, you're not going to have like people, scrambling to set up not-for-profit daycares just to get government money. That it's almost a contradiction in terms.
Well, and one would assume to be a not-for-profit, there's other requirements that your business must have. I mean, again, look at a church. Look at, for example, the place where our son does his therapy. It's a registered nonprofit charity. There's really strict guidelines to become a not-for-profit, you know?
Well, and there's definitely some strict guidelines to becoming a for-profit daycare, but that's mainly around, your facility and how you operate it and regulations. You don't have to worry about all of the requirements for being a nonprofit. So it's all of the requirements for being a nonprofit and all of the requirements for being an actual registered daycare that you have to worry about. So, this is the issue. They set this up, and a lot of people are like, well, they intended this to fail. It doesn't make sense that they would intend this to fail, because it makes them look like a bunch of tools.
I don't think it was intentional. I just don't think they did a good job, and this is the result.